parents out there have a really, really tough job. Not only do they need to make sure they try and raise their kids in the best way possible, but they also need to ensure that the external stimuli their children receive is the right kind. I once read a quote that said, "Choose your friends with care, you can become what they are." So how do you as a parent guard against your child befriending the wrong kind of people? Parenting expert Nikki Bush is here to help us answer that question. Good morning, Nikki.
Good morning.
So as kids go into their tweens and teens, their friends seem to become more and more important in their lives. Why is that?
Yeah, from around the age of 10 right through to at least 16, they have this almost driving biological need to socialize, to connect with other people, and the peer group starts becoming more important in terms of their opinions than their parents' opinions. So the peer group's opinions start counting for more.
Why is that?
It's just the way our children make their social connections. You know, they're moving away from us. The objective of parenting is to let our children go. And ultimately, we let our children go into the wider, broader society. And in order to do that well, they need the opportunity to socialize, to develop their social skills. They can do it very well within the family structure, but they need to go and practice it on strangers, on other people, on people who are not as close to them as their parents. And so making friends, and these days we have, of course, social media where you make friends as well. Making friends is very, very important. Making friends, particularly of the real kind, face to face. Okay, human to human. This is how we learn about emotional intelligence, how our words impact on each other. What are the emotions that come up when somebody says something like this or something like that? And on social media, of course, you can say all sorts of good and horrible things, and you won't know the impact that you have on other people. So the kind of conversations that we need to be having with our children as they move forward is that when they get caught up in crowds, you know, in the peer group, that they should strive to behave in a crowd as they would if they were alone. So if there's stuff going on in the crowd that you don't like, are you going to just go with the flow? If it goes against your grain, goes against the values that you have, or are you going to walk away? So we need to start doing some scenario planning with our kids, because the peer group is very magnetic. And a lot of it is good. But we need to do the scenario planning of the what-ifs. If
this were to happen,
what would you do? And if you start doing scenario planning with your kids, it may or may not ever happen to them. But should it happen, they've kind of got a plan B mapped out in their head already as to how they might respond in that situation. And that makes them feel a whole lot safer and more confident. And you know, sometimes you send your kids out and you warn them about these things, and then when they come home, they said, how did you know?
And then you're like, oh, yes,
you know, we have lived.
So.
We actually have lived. And it's not like we don't understand peer group pressure. We were there once before. And so perhaps share some of your own personal stories with your kids. And we need to make things really concrete for our children. So when we talk to them, they don't like speeches.
Okay, conversation is what it is.
They want more conversations that matter and fewer speeches that don't. And the conversations need to be quite short and quite visual, because they're a visual generation. So you could say something to them like, what if what you do today lands up on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow? Would you feel proud of the story you created?
Wow. And obviously this is something that you have to reinforce, because I think when first asking a question like that, a child wouldn't really be able to conceptualize what the consequences would be. So it's a reinforcement of, you know...
Sure. So, you know, give a real concrete example, like, say, Tiger Woods. I mean, he was the front page news for how long? For his positive behaviour. And then he became the front page news for his negative behaviour. So that's a nice, real life example to give them. And there's many, many examples that come up in the news all the time that would be great to say, look what happened here. You know, imagine that happened to you. How would you feel? How, when it comes to social media, putting photographs up on your Facebook profile, be careful what you put up, because the internet remembers. Recruiting companies, employers are looking at what you have on your social media sites. How would my best friend's father feel, or what would he think about me if he saw this picture?
Very true. That question kind of, it opens up a whole new kind of playing field. But of course, all of this starts with a deep sense of self, developing your own individual character. So how do you, as a parent, help your child develop that?
Well, obviously through a lot of conversation, and by catching your children doing things right. When they display the values that you think are are right and good, we need to acknowledge them in that very moment. So, for example, a little girl in nursery school being really kind to a new child, acknowledge the kindness. So we don't just acknowledge achievements like getting into the A cricket team, but we acknowledge the who. So kindness, generosity. In fact, I heard a wonderful story recently of a child who was didn't come from a really wealthy background, and he lost his new fandangled expensive gadget, and a good friend of his who was extremely wealthy had been given the same thing for Christmas, had not even unpacked it from its packaging yet, and he just gave it to his friend. That's because amazing. He knew that his friend would never be able to get another one, and he would. And that actually made it onto Facebook, that story. And all the parents' friends were acknowledging Callan for what he'd done.
Wow.
You know, and those are the kinds of things. So honouring the child, integrity, honesty, truth, all those sorts of things, we need to catch our children in the moment of doing those things, of displaying those things, so that they get a sense of what our values are, what our unwritten ground rules are in our home, so that when they're caught in the peer group pressure, they've got strong emotional anchors to pull on.
Thank you very much, Nikki. That's an amazing story, and I think an inspiring message to parents out there. Imagine if we all lived in a world where our children grew up with these kind of character traits. It would be a wonderful world indeed.
Stay with Expresso and SABC3.